Thanks a million for coming. I don't know about Lisa and Eimear, but this is kind of my first time out in a while. And you know when you kind of you go to the shed to get the bike out, and it's kind of rusty and the wheels are flat. I'm a bit nervous about how ready I am for road, basically. But hopefully you'll be patient and we'll have a great chat. I'm going to read an introduction to Lisa McInerney and Eimear Ryan, and then we're going to hear them read from their books for about 10 or so minutes each, and then we'll just have a chat. And we'll try and keep a few minutes for questions at the end if anyone has questions. So, we talk often of Ireland as having a literary landscape. Well, Lisa McInerney and Eimear Ryan are two of the most exquisite and serious and skilled figures out there in that landscape today. What a privilege it is to get to hear them read from and talk about their new books. Galwegian and adopted Corkonian Lisa McInerney is the author of a loose trilogy of 3 novels, The Glorious Heresies, The Blood Miracles, and released this May, The Rules of Revelation. For her work on these books, she's won, get ready, the Bailey's Prize, the Desmond Elliott Prize, the Ireland Francophonie Ambassador Literary Award, the Primo Eduardo Kilgren Award for Literature, and the RSL Encore Award. Her short fiction has been published in anthologies like Town and Country, Common People, and The Long Gaze Back, as well as featuring in The Stinging Fly, Granta, and on BBC Radio 4. She's currently a contributing editor at The Stinging Fly. She's going to read from The Rules of Revelation today, and I have a few things I want to say about this brilliant book, and the trilogy, in fact, in general, I suppose. Way back in 2015, I think, in Lisa's first book, The Glorious Heresies, I met a troupe of characters that won my heart very, very quickly and completely. It's primarily, I suppose, the story of Ryan Cusack, a young guy from the north side of Cork City. But throughout his various trials and tribulations, his encounters with people, people he loves, befriends, makes enemies of. By 2021, having finished the trilogy, I have to say goodbye to Karine, Georgie, Ryan, Tony, Maureen, Mel, loads of others, and I'm going to miss them an awful lot. And so real are they that I'll probably spend the rest of my life half expecting to bump into one of them in town. It's profoundly cool what Lisa has done in merging these unforgettable, deeply complex characters with a moving portrait of our beloved city of Cork. Georgie made me very uncomfortable, made me confront myself. Izzy, I hated. Ryan tortured me. Tony upended me completely. Maureen is, well, Maureen, one of a kind. Some of the scenes of parenthood, of love in this book and the previous 2 books will stick with me as long as I live. And how Lisa nails the living of life is something, as a fellow writer, I'm very, very jealous of. Lisa's gift to us here is a book that prods the brain, that grabs you around the heart and squeezes, and yet it's pacey, it's so thrilling as well at the same time. And it's a triumph of place. Cork and Ireland at their best and worst, the Cusack house, places and scenes that'll live long in my memory. And when I think about Irish art as something for all time, forever, something reaching back to Anton, to cave painting, Cuchulainn, myth-making, all of that, I genuinely think of Lisa's trilogy as having a place in that timeline. Thematically, The Rules of Revelation, which I'll just hold up, seems to me a book about making art, about identity, figuring out who you are in spite of society's plans for you. And I think we have this idea of society progressing, but this book puts us in no doubt that society progresses for some people, I think, easier than others. It's also a book about family, about parenthood, and what you inherit, and about love, and best of all, I think, about what it means to be a living, breathing human being. Eimear Ryan is a writer, editor, rising star in the bookseller as of a couple of days ago, and a camogie player from Tipperary, and she's also an adopted Corkonian if she wants to be. She's there long enough. As well as having hurled for Tip and still hurling for the Bars, Eimear writes a column for the Irish Examiner, co-founded and edits a brilliant journal of writing called Banshee. They're all rising stars. And most importantly to me, Eimear writes wonderful fiction. She has published short fiction in various magazines and anthologies, including The Stinging Fly, Town and Country, The Long Gaze Back, Granta, and The Dublin Review. She has also published a children's book on the Mayo footballer, Cora Staunton, and she's currently the writer-in-residence at UCC. Holding Her Breath, Eimear's debut novel, was published in June. Holding Her Breath is, hold on, I'll hold it up, the kind of book, again, that as a writer I'm very jealous of. Eimear does so much in one novel, thematically, stylistically, in terms of real, complex, again, deeply affecting characters. And yet it never seems overworked or overly busy. It's the story primarily of Beth Crow, an elite-level swimmer and a first year at university, as she tries to find her feet and embarks upon a secretive relationship with a postdoc. She finds herself increasingly drawn into the story of her famous grandfather, the poet Benjamin Crow. Though it clips along at a compelling pace, it's a book that stays with you long after reading. I found myself thinking about it constantly afterwards, about Beth and what the future might hold for her, about Ben Crow as a tragic figure of Irish letter, about what their connection meant in terms of family, but in terms of identity, in terms of what you want to be. I was thinking about Ben Crow as a husband, a friend, a father, an artist, about Lydia Crow, his wife, as a kind of archiver of her late husband's work, but also as a family censor of sorts, as a shaper of family history, a kind of a tributary through which identity again flows from grandparent to grandchild and so on. I found myself thinking about sport, its demands, things about, modern relationships, about parental and grandparental relationships. And even I was constantly thinking about Sadie, a supposedly peripheral figure, Beth's college housemate. And that, I think it's pertinent to say that the book is a book where no character feels peripheral. They're all completely authentic and the star of their own show. And on character, Beth is a triumph, an utterly real person, so much so that she can annoy me without my ever ceasing to care for her. I can get very frustrated with Beth, but never stop loving her. It's a book that lulls you and compels you forward at the exact same time, and I don't know that I've read another book like that, to be honest. And on that, it doesn't feel at all like a debut novel. It feels so mature, so accomplished, so fully formed and sure of itself. And I think that just speaks to the stature of its very talented, very important, very exciting author, Eimear Ryan. So the books are different in a lot of senses, but they have some things in common, which we might talk about. Ideas about, for example, memory and forgetting, and when we do which and why, about family and identity. And I think both books take into account the idea of each person as a solitary being, but part of a collective consciousness, be it in the adoration of musicians and poets or in the mores and frameworks society tries to cram us all into. So there's lots to chat about, but firstly, let's give them a big round of applause and hear them read. Eimear, you agreed to read first.
Thanks so much, Danny, for the lovely introduction. And it's so nice to be here doing an event with pals, and even better to have a lovely audience in front of us, real-life people. It's great. So thank you so much to Eimear and everyone at West Cork Lit Fest. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to read chapter 1. And in this, we meet Beth as she's kind of tentatively dipping a toe back into the pool after a long absence. And we also get to meet her new college roommate, Sadie. She has the whole pool to herself. She has seen the others off. The rugby players in for the recovery swim, who splash around for 20 minutes and then retire to the sauna. The slow, steady pensioners who breaststroke endless laps. Beth counts them leaving, one by one, as she sluices through the water, flipping tautly at each end. It will never leave her, she thinks, the need to win. The dart passes on the bridge that stretches over the complex, momentarily turning the pool nightclub dark. She breaches the surface to adjust her goggles. The lifeguard makes eye contact and then looks pointedly at his watch. She swims another 5 laps before getting out, her skin drummed tight. It feels illicit somehow, being alone in the water. No coach towering over her at the pool's edge, saying, surely she can do better than that. Now she does as she likes. After 100 laps, she feels calm and rejuvenated, her body pinging with the tremors of exercise, an old, good feeling. She started again last winter, doubtful at first, not telling anyone, poking the pool's calm surface with a toe as if testing a bath for temperature. But as soon as she slipped into the water, she felt her body relax in a way that it hadn't in months. It wasn't the act of swimming that had been the problem, it turned out. It was everything around it. It was the spectre of her potential rippling after her, impossible to shake off. Her new on-campus apartment is opposite the sports complex. Her bedroom overlooks the climbing wall with its brightly coloured footholds. This morning, she sat in her window and watched. It was raining, and it seemed as if the climbers were in danger of being engulfed by the raindrops that streaked down her window. Later, she will fall asleep to the rumble of the dart, and she imagines this part at least, the slosh of water in the dormant pool. She crosses the street to her new home, her wet hair hardening in the autumn breeze. Her mother was hurt when Beth announced her intention to move into rooms an hour by train up the coast from the family home. It would have been possible, she supposes, to commute, but the room came with a sports scholarship. This is a chance for independence, however fleeting, and she owes it to herself. So far, she's only had momentary glimpses of Sadie, her assigned roommate, who's perpetually on her way out to the various orientation week activities, treasure hunt, table quiz, giant Jenga, that Beth is too shy to attend on her own. But in some ways, they're already on intimate terms. The shower drain is thatched over with Sadie's dark red hair, the bathroom cabinet full of palettes and butters and serums that Beth can barely identify, much less apply. Her wheelie suitcase and assorted cardboard boxes stand in a loose ring on the bedroom floor like a Neolithic monument. She considers the window, the narrow bed, the empty shelves. The room is a clean slate. She goes into the tiny kitchen that bridges her room and Sadie's, fills the kettle, flicks it on. Sadie's door is slightly ajar. If she shifts her weight, it might creak open. The first thing she notices is that Sadie has moved her furniture around, managed to wrestle the room's formation into something less utilitarian. Breeze block walls broken up with vintage posters of Some Like It Hot and a Boot de Soufflé. Fat luxury candles in defiance of the stern fire safety talk they had to sit through on day one. Cushions and beanbags sprout everywhere like colourful spores. Beth takes a sort of pride in her own stripped-back decor. What sort of person is her roommate that she has to advertise her personality so forcefully? A person who wears band t-shirts, a person who reads old paperbacks in public and hopes to be asked about them. Sadie's bed is unmade, which reassures Beth somehow. She sits on the rumpled blankets to examine the built-in bookcase. Her attention is immediately drawn to a familiar bright yellow spine, Benjamin Crow's selected poems. Absent-mindedly, she pulls it out. Most of the shelves, however, are taken up by DVDs, The Lodger, Cat People, Gaslight, The Hitchhiker. Unlike the books, the movies aren't alphabetized. It bothers her, an itch she wants to scratch. The apartment door opens. She has no chance of making it back to her room unnoticed, but she plants her feet anyway, tensed for flight. Incriminatingly, the book is still in her hand. Half of Sadie's face is obscured by a striped scarf, which she unwinds with whirring efficiency. Her features, when they emerge, are fiercely defined. Strong brows, big glasses, heavily glossed lips. "Oh, hello, Beth," she says. "Yeah, sorry, I came in to get a tampon, a hair tie," she thinks. "Don't worry." Sadie drops her satchel on a tiny, perfect footstool. "I've creaked many bookshelves in my time. They're arranged by year, by the way, not by director." "What?" "The films, if you want to borrow any." "Oh, thanks." The kettle clicks off. Beth nods towards the kitchen, grateful for the cue. Sadie blocks her way. Stay and have a chat, she instructs. Sadie is doing English in a 2-subject moderatorship with film studies. She's from Laois and her accent sounds flat to Beth, almost terse. Sadie gestures at Beth's wet hair, her dampening t-shirt. Are you just out of the shower? I was swimming. Sadie nods. You've powerful shoulders on you. Here, what was your last name again? I want to add you. Her phone is out, her fingers probing the screen. Beth says crow before she remembers how pitiful her social media presence is. Any relation to your man? Sadie asks, gesturing towards the selected poems. Still she scrolls. He's my grandfather, Beth says, or was. Sadie gapes at her. Fuck off. Yeah, it's no big deal, really. I never knew him or anything because, obviously, it's kind of a big deal. He was one of the few poets on the Leaving Cert that wasn't an absolute dose to study. The sea god, the fucking sea god, man, it destroyed me. What's your favourite of his poems? Beth folds her arms and looks at the ceiling, hoping to convey the difficulty of choosing. Skiff, if I had to pick one? I'm not as familiar with his work as I should be, to be honest. That's allowed, Sadie says, leaning on her desk. Sure, you were reared on him. There's probably no getting away from him. Exactly. In truth, Skiff is the only one of her grandfather's poems that really speaks to her because of his description of the small pointed boat, a knife for cutting through water. The phrase sometimes pops into her head when she's swimming, like a mantra. With Sadie, Beth's relationship to Benjamin Crow seems to be an asset. In school, it was different. Kids mockingly recited lines from the poems within her earshot. When she objected, they'd just laugh. Calm down, Beth. Don't off yourself. Studious types complained about her unfair advantage. Teachers asked her in front of everyone if Crow would come up on the exam that year, as if she had any way of knowing. He had come up in the event. Beth had hesitated for a moment, then chose the Elizabeth Bishop question instead. They're lounging on the beanbags, half watching The Lady from Shanghai on a retro DVD projector. At some point, Sadie produces a bottle of wine from under her desk and pours them each a glass. Beth hasn't done much drinking in her life, and as the wine takes effect, her movements feel slow and deliberate, as though she's underwater. So it's just you and your mum at home, Sadie asks, after describing her own household. Though Sadie claims to be well shot of them, to Beth, Sadie's family life sounds idyllic. Dogs, farmland, precocious twin brothers. My gran lives with us too, in the attic. Beth realises how that sounds, but cannot seem to rescue the sentence. Is that Ben's widow? Sadie asks. She's alive still. Beth nods. Whoa, well, I'd probably retreat to the attic too, to be honest. She's definitely a bit reclusive these days. For as long as Beth can remember, Lydia has been distrustful of outsiders. Even now, whenever a new article or seminar comes around, suggesting the usual things, alcoholism, womanizing, bouts of rage, it is curtly dismissed. These people didn't know your grandfather, Lydia will say. In her drunkenness, Beth becomes sentimental and eases the yellow-spined book from the shelf. She studies the author photo. Ben is standing, she realises, in front of the gable end of the house he lived in, the house she grew up in, something she's never noticed before. He's wearing a thick woolen jumper, trying out a beard. Behind thin gold-rimmed glasses, he's looking at the camera, through the camera, beyond it. He's looking out to sea. Thanks very much.
Lisa, want to read?
Yes. Well, look at that. My husband leaves just as I go to start reading. He's heard it all before. Just to echo what Eimear said, it's really lovely to be here, and it's so nice to be back in Bantry and in a real life situation. I also am as rusty as Danny's bike, so. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit from this, The Rules of Revelation. I'm going to read from a bit where the character in question is Maureen, who, for people who don't know, is a 68-year-old lady who has had a very colourful life and is kind of now about to find a new thing to do. I don't think I need to say much more about her. We'll have a go anyway. She had a new vocation sprung on her. She was north of the Lee one morning, minding her own business. One of 3 wands wearing anoraks and sensible trousers asked, "Is this the point for the tour?" "Is this the what for the what?" Maureen said. "The meeting point for the walking tour," the one on the right said, in an accent Maureen thought was probably German, and then, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were the guide." "I'm not," Maureen said, "though I suppose I have the shoes for it." The footpath by the entrance to the development in which her son Jimmy had bought her apartment was cracked and uneven. She had taken to exercising caution and wearing clodhoppers. "I think we are in the wrong place," said one of the ones. It was 20 past the hour. "It'd be the wrong time for a tour, surely," Maureen said. "Though if you walked a few steps that way, you'd get a different time again. The 4 liars, you see?" One of the ones dutifully asked, "4 liars?" "That's what they call the Shandon Clock. 4 faces, 4 different times. They did repairs on it a few years ago, but could do nothing about the lying. It's all in the mechanism, apparently, that the 4 clocks will have 4 different ideas of the time. It's in the inner workings of the Irish to be liberal with the truth. Not that you'd like that, aren't ye? Fierce, punctual Germans!" The 3 ones laughed. "Oh, I didn't think my accent was so strong," said the middle one. And the one on the left said, "We're from Rottweil, in the south." "Is that a city?" "Oh, it's a town. It's a very old town." Maureen was disappointed. She wanted to talk about southern cities and geographical camaraderie. She developed a speech on the subject after a conversation at a bus stop 6 months ago with a stocky pup from Krakow. "How long are you waiting on your guide?" she asked. "Oh, I think almost 30 minutes. We rang the bells in the tower while we were waiting. Maybe he came and left again." "Not a bit of it," Maureen said. 30 minutes is a bit much even for the fellas round here. You must have the wrong place, 'cause Corkonians would leave you waiting, but they wouldn't leave you down. And in the spirit of that statement, I'll escort you to where you were supposed to end up. I'm Cork born and bred, I know where I'm going." "Oh, that isn't necessary, we wouldn't like to trouble you." "No trouble," Maureen said, wild-eyed. She led the ones to the Butter Museum in the Firkin Crane and recounted what she remembered about Cork's dairy industry, which wasn't much. So she told them instead about a recent case involving an Irish butter smuggling ring in Wisconsin. The name of the butter involved was Kerrygold, but she didn't want to confuse the Germans by invoking the neighbours. Cork butter, she told them, was the best in the world. The social welfare, she said, used to give out butter vouchers. That's how important butter was. The elderly, the infirm, the layabouts all got subsidised butter gobby with the days. They stopped at Griffith Bridge and Maureen looked back towards Shandon, hands on her hips. "I'd say there's not much else in the north side for you," she thought hard. "The old jail is out Sunday as well." "Yes," said the one on the right. "We visited on Wednesday." "My mother was from Sunday as well. They have waxworks out in that jail and I swear to God 2 or 3 of them are the head off her." "She looked like them," clarified the one in the middle. "She was an old bitch," Maureen said, "with a face like a half-chewed toffee." "Like a half-chewed toffee? And the toffee you get in Ireland would glue your jaw shut," Maureen said, staring. She recovered and waved an arm. "That's the north side now. Less about places of interest, more about people of interest. 10 minutes up there and you come to the North Mon, where all the great lads went to school. Terence McSweeney and Frank O'Connor and Neil Tobin and our own Taoiseach Jack Lynch and Rory Gallagher, God rest their souls." "I've read Frank O'Connor's stories," said the one on the right. "I haven't," Maureen said. "Cork is a very middle place. But then I suppose isn't that the way of history? It's all feckin' men. Here now they're proud of Roy Keane, oh, fine north side boy, and Killian Murphy and Jonathan Rice, what's his name, and Dennis Irwin, and the little fecker off Game of Thrones, Jesus is the only woman we had, Danny Le Feckin' Rue. These are celebrities," the one in the middle said. "Well, insofar as they can be around here. Come down now this way, I want to show you something." They walked westwards along a disquietingly high lea. Maureen stopped at the footbridge at the end of the quay. "This is St. Vincent's Bridge." 2 of the ones took photographs through the lattice steel. "And there," Maureen pointed, "is where I used to live. A ground floor flat in a done-up townhouse, though you wouldn't know that now because it went up in flames a few years ago. I was only in it when I found out it used to be a brothel." "How long ago?" one of the ones asked. Maureen was looking too intently at her old home to identify the speaker. "Was it a brothel? Oh, just before I moved in." "It's illegal in Ireland?" "Brothel keeping is," Maureen said, who had done her research and considered herself better informed than the average nana. "But didn't I tell you, this is a fierce male city." "Fierce meaning violent?" "Fierce meaning very. Few people moved on the opposite quay. This Maureen had noticed about her time living here. The quays on both sides of the Lee here were quieter than they should have been, not in a peaceful way, but in a way that suggested suspicion. Maureen had lived alone with 2 empty floors above her. The walls were imbued with bad feeling, down to her actions as much as the men who'd occupied their leisure there. It could have been that she was giving it unnatural shadows, that she was shook now with sentiment, assigning meaning to meagre things. Fierce, very, violently, she added. One time I stopped a lad jumping into the Lee from this footbridge, just before Christmas 3.5 years ago now. That's the violence of the male too, isn't it? When they finish wrecking all around them, they turn on themselves. None of the ones spoke. Maureen exhaled and turned to them. Though things grow in the cracks of all sorts of wrecks, she said, and it's far from parched, this city, the great marsh of Munster, the Lee keeps bursting its banks. I think sometimes it's putting manners on the place. I'm sure you don't want to hear about battles and suicide attempts, but there's light and dark, and every city has plenty of both. What you see now, she flicked a wrist at the river's course, is the fruits of my labours, or the labours of my generation. One of the ones saw the opening and said, "Are there many Europeans here?" "We're all Europeans," Maureen said sternly. "Continentals is what I'd call you." Yes, the place is hopping with you. But I wasn't saying the only people here are the children of the natives. I mean, Ireland is changing a lot. It isn't changing enough, Maureen said. And because the ones looked restless, she said, "Germans are pure mad for sausages." The one who looked least perplexed said, "You mean mad about?" "What we'll do," Maureen said, "is go along the south bank here to the Opera House and the Crawford Gallery, up to the Huguenot Cemetery, onto Pana, down to Mutton Lane so you can see the mural, and then in through the English market, where you'll find the best sausages in Ireland. And before I leave you, I'll point out the port of Cork, which is on the 2nd largest harbour in the world. We're a pirate city, damn good at coming second. But have you ever heard the saying?" She paused. She had a showmanship, Maureen feeling, and on this occasion she thought it wasn't going to get her into trouble. "Ireland," she said, "would sink without its Cork." We'll leave that there now.
I'm envisaging doing the Maureen Phelan tour of Cork one day. In the way we kind of have the Bloomsday thing, a Maureen Phelan tour of Cork would be brilliant.
I think that would be great. We should do it.
I have a general question for both of you to start out, a settler. In terms of so Lisa, probably a different kind of question for you in terms of you're at the end of a trilogy, but when a person sets out to write a book, I think it's probably different for everyone. But sometimes you have a checklist in your head of things you want to do, like what you want to achieve. And I don't mean prizes, I mean thematically, or you want to write about something. Or did you have a checklist? Did you have ideas in your head of what you wanted to do when you started writing your books, or when you knew you were going to finish your books?
Not really. I didn't really have a checklist, but it's probably kind of a typical first novel in a lot of ways, in that kind of everything I care about is in there. It's got sports, it's got literature, it's got the kind of family mystery. I kind of just threw everything at the wall, and
so did it come organically? Because I was mad to ask you more specifically, did you set out to write a sports novel? Because I think you've written a brilliant sports novel, or did you set out to write a novel and sports was just there every day, going I want to be in?
That was it exactly. I think the family literary mystery came first. Benjamin Crowe was kind of the first figure that came to me, and then I was thinking about his granddaughter. And just as I kept writing her, I realised I really wanted her to be a sports person, obviously because it's been so important in my life. And I think, especially as a young woman, it really does change the way that you approach the world and navigate the world and your body and all of that. And I think I wanted her to be physically strong as well. I wanted her to be an imposing physical presence in the novel, because I think in an era of strong female characters, we don't have a lot of physically strong female characters, unless they're superheroes or something like that. So particularly as she kind of gets entangled in this kind of compromised relationship at university, I kind of wanted her to be powerful in and of herself.
She's active, isn't she? She's not aggressor is probably too strong, but she's always walking forward,
Absolutely,
yeah. Brilliant. And you have a very different scenario in terms of, did you have notions notions being a key word when you set out to write the trilogy? And then I suppose when you get to the end of it, was it just, I need to figure out where everyone ends up, or was it different?
Yeah, it's an odd one because like there were certain things I wanted characters to experience, or certain kind of scenes that were popping into my head that I was like, oh, I'd like to put them in that scenario and see what happened, that kind of thing. And I obviously wanted to get to the end and find a good place to leave them all, as in a place that made sense in terms of the 3 books, and that it would feel complete to the reader. But other than that, like, I think for this one more than the other 2, I almost felt myself in it more. I wanted to kind of challenge myself, and I wanted to kind of write paragraphs that I would kind of be proud of, that kind of thing. So I was less sunk into it than I was with the first 2. I kind of a little bit more distance in it, and trying to kind of, just trying to impress myself, I think, really. I didn't, but I mean, that's the point.
I was going to say, did you manage to impress yourself?
But you're not supposed to. If you've ever impressed yourself with a book, God, be worried. Like, if you ever kind of read something and go, God, I'm amazing. I mean, like, that's when it's all going wrong there at that point. Like,
in terms of figuring out where these people were going to end up, did you have, because the first 2 books were so good, so successful, you obviously gotten a lot of reader reactions over the 6 years. Did you kind of have these was there a lot of noise, like external pressure going, oh, well, I remember that time that person said to me that they wanted Ryan to die, or, did you have to shut that stuff out, or was that not a problem for you at all?
I tried to shut it out, but there was a kind of a feeling of, maybe that's kind of part of how it feels like a more external process this time around, just because the stories were out there, the people were out there, and readers had expectations, and they had kind of feelings about various characters, and they had suggestions about things, or they had kind of theories about where it might go. I wanted to shut it out, but it's very hard to, and it's not in a good way. It wasn't like, oh, what a great idea, I'll work that in. It was more like me kind of having an idea about something, wanting to write it down, and kind of visualizing it, and then going, oh, will that annoy people? And that's no way to write. Like, you really have to kind of get rid of it and scrub it out, really, because you can't be writing to what you think other people's expectations are, because everyone is different. Like, some of readers of the 2 books, like, they have completely different things they react to, and they have different favourite characters, and they react very negatively to some people, very positively to others. So if you're kind of going to please everybody, you'll please no one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And in terms of then characters, a question for both of you. Well, actually, more for you. Who are you going to miss the most, and how much do you miss Beth? And are they? How does it work in your imaginative space? Are they out there somewhere, or are they a device that you used in a book once and they're gone now? Like,
oh no, they're out. I'm fully convinced these people are in some sort of parallel universe to me, and I just managed to get a glimpse in and kind of tell the story. That's the only way I'll keep sane altogether. I can't imagine them as being just done and kind of the marionette puppets just going like this now that I've finished them. I hate the idea of that. I check in on them sometimes. I know I sound absolutely mental, by the way. I check in on them sometimes, and I wonder how they're getting on in the pandemic and what they think, and like all of this kind of stuff. I think, I'll miss them horribly. I really will, I think. But at the same time, I'm kind of not like, I want to do something else now. I want to do something different. And I kind of keep saying by thinking that they're doing something else in another plane, in another sphere. No?
Do you think they're all grand?
I do actually.
We can't give away too much, actually.
I've pretty much, I kind of left them, I've brought them, I said this before, I brought them to the school gates on their first day and said, off you go now. I've done my best for them, I think.
Yeah.
What about Beth?
I kind of feel the same, like, because it took me a long time to write the book. I think I started it late 2013, and it was late 2019 then when I got the book deal. It's kind of 6 years of it just being in my head. I just felt a great sense of relief when the book was out there, and it was weirdly validating that these characters now existed in other people's heads too. You know? So I feel ready to like say goodbye to Beth, but Benjamin and Lydia, the grandparent figures in the book, kept kind of threatening to take over the narrative, and that was something I had to kind of keep an eye on when I was editing, because I had to remember that it was Beth's story. But I do sometimes think about going and doing like a short story about those older characters.
Yeah. And I think that's what I kind of was trying to figure out a way to say that when I was doing the intro, in terms of like, it really does feel like all books, like characters, they're all the star of their own story because everyone sees things from one point of view. But like in that book, it really did feel like I want to read the Benjamin Crow novel, I want to read the Lydia Crow novel, I want to read the Sadie novel. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of you did a brilliant job of I don't know if the word is authenticity or what, but I suppose on writing characters, something that you are both fantastic at is writing complex characters, by which I mean like more plainly, characters who can piss you off and make mistakes, characters who can be both really, really nice and really, really horrible. And I imagine, well, I suppose being a writer myself, if I have a character who's not likable, as everyone's likable to someone, right? So not likable is the wrong phrase, but that's kind of what I mean. A character who is making horrible choices or whatever, right? Doing horrible things sometimes. I would find myself going, oh, people are going to hate, this character needs to be very pleasing and likable to people for them to like the book. But you guys, I don't think that would have ever entered your consciousness, right?
No, and not for me anyway. I mean, but the kind of books that I'm drawn to are books with awful people in them. I kind of really enjoy terrible people and seeing what they get up to. And I like it kind of, I think that's more interesting as a reader to kind of find characters that you find naughty or that you find infuriating or frustrating or just awkward. You know, because that's what people are like. And you know yourself, that's what, well, I can only speak for maybe you're all lovely people, but I know myself, I'm you know, I've got debts and they're not good. You know, so I mean, like trying to kind of capture that. I mean, that's the great challenge as well, trying to capture characters that feel like they're living and breathing, but also feel like they have the capacity to make enemies and to make wrong choices. Who wants to read about somebody who's perfect and somebody who's like just kind and gentle? You do run the risk of pissing off the reader, but again, like if you're pleasing everybody, you're pleasing no one, I think, yeah.
I know what you're saying. I did have a lot of those kind of arguments in my head, you know, and of course, like we're all flawed people. We all do bad things and make mistakes, but we all have a mechanism of like justifying it to ourselves as well. So I did that a lot with the characters, like, you know, if Beth can justify this to herself, you know, and if that can kind of psychologically make sense, I can kind of put that on the page. Yeah.
No, it's brilliant because, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit paranoid or something, but when I watch it, you watch a lot of TV, right? You watch The Sopranos, Mad Men, all these leading characters who are bollockses, right? And you love it. You love watching it, and you kind of want it. Succession, I mean, you know, you want to see these characters. Sometimes you want to see them fail. Sometimes you see the humanity in them. But I find with a lot of contemporary fiction, there's a pull away from that. Like you'd have a thing of the characters, a positive, like a likable, people being likable and things like that. But I'm just delighted that you two aren't into that. And probably all my favorite books have characters that were the exact same characters we're talking about. But I don't know where that pressure comes from in terms of is this character okay? Like, are they going to like him? But it seems to be there somewhere.
It reminds me now of, you know, when you go to a job interview and they're like, you know, what are your flaws? And they're like, oh, I better come up with something likable. I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah. Identity is a big one, right? So Beth is figuring out who she is while figuring out who her grandfather was to an extent. She's got, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, there's something in her past in terms of a great sense of stress from the sport that she loves, right? So she's lost all her passion for the thing that kind of maybe defined her, or she felt defined her, and she's coming back to it. Where are you at now, like that you've written a book through it about where we might, as humans, get identity from? Like, where does it, because Beth gets some of it from the things she does, from her parental relationship, like her dad's involvement with swimming. But she's also got Benjamin Crow in the background, who has kind of defined her in terms of, right, he wrote the line, a knife through water. She became the knife through water, so to speak. Where's your head at with in terms of where we get our identity from, or where Beth gets her identity from?
Yeah, she's kind of wrestling with that question the whole way through the novel, because in some ways she kind of has a push-pull relationship, I think, with her grandfather's legacy. She's very resistant. He's very much romanticized as a kind of a tortured, doomed artist, you know, and she's very resistant to that myth and the way that people project his kind of doomed romantic image onto her. So she kind of wants to run a mile from that, but she's also kind of intrigued by it. And she kind of grew up in a house where her mother and grandmother were still quite traumatized from Benjamin's death and just didn't really talk about it. So she's kind of got from the outside world, this myth of her grandfather, and then inside the house, this kind of silence, this radio silence, and she kind of wants to find her own way to an idea of her grandfather. And I think that for her is her connection with him, and that's her almost like forging her own identity. You know, she's not getting the received idea from her family, she's not getting the received idea from the world at large. She's kind of finding out her own stuff. And I kind of thought of her almost like a detective in this novel, you know, kind of going back.
That is kind of her quest, like, isn't it, in the novel? Like,
uncovering information that, you know, nobody else has come across, and then putting her own interpretation on it.
Yeah, but then against that you have, she's also a swimmer, and like her connection with her dad is kind of swimming, but that kind of doesn't run amok for her because she's just getting back into it. But that kind of the passion side of her identity is kind of in swimming as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, like it's very much a part of her, and I think she kind of comes around to the idea that like swimming is what she does, it's not who she is, you know, and she comes to a much healthier relationship to it. I think she is able to come back to that kind of early childhood feeling of like coming to a sport because you love it and you enjoy it and you feel at home in it, you know, rather than, I think a lot of times when you kind of go down an elite track, especially as a young person, you know, there can be a lot of pressures and outside nonsense kind of put on your shoulders that has nothing to do with that original attraction to the sport, you know. So she's trying to let go of all that baggage and just get back to that original childhood love of the sport, you know.
Yeah, the sense of play.
Yeah.
And Lisa, like, geez, there's several characters we could talk about. I'm going to hone in on Ryan and Mel, probably. Ryan is someone who has his identity decided for him when he's, whatever age is he, 14, 15 in Heresies. And his quest, his journey in the trilogy is figuring out who he is on a different term. And then you might talk about Mel as well, because she's very, in real time, struggling with her identity in Revelations.
Yeah, I think the thing with identity in real world and in fiction too is that it is kind of imposed on you to a degree by the people around you, because we're defined by connection to other people, or a spot in the family or a spot in the community, what we're like at school, whatever that might be. And the whole kind of thing is, the journey is to try and make peace in your own way with who everybody else says you are, and kind of try and balance it out yourself. I mean, the thing with Ryan is, I mean, it's probably happened before that. There's been a lot of kind of imposing of identity on him, as in this book, he's finally kind of making some sort of journey towards being a musician, but that was the idea that was planted in him at the age of 3 when he started playing piano as well. So I mean, like that was imposed on him by his mother, but he just likes it, so he's okay with it. And like, you know, I mean, then of course in The Glorious Heresies, he's like, for the ones who haven't read it, like he's 15 in The Glorious Heresies, and he's a bold little pup actually is what he is, because he's even at that age he's kind of into drug dealing, and he's figured out that that's how he'll make money, and he's actually quite good at it. He's good at doing maths in his head. That's all you need really, and good at being patient. But so, and then of course that defines how people deal with you, because you are this dark presence, you are this peripheral person, you are kind of like a problem in your city and in your community. That's how people deal with you. So how do you make peace with that? How do you move past it? How do you kind of, so all of that, like he's figuring that out. And I think in this book, I think he has made peace with what he likes. He's taken these things that people imposed on him, he's taken the ones he likes and he's going with it. And it's kind of nice to see him doing that. Mel is different, because Mel has a much more kind of intrinsic problem, in that Mel is born a girl and her name is Melinda, and she's been given this lovely frilly name by her mother, who was a terribly complex and awful human being that Mel does not want to be associated with in any way, shape or form, and feels very distinct from. Mel doesn't really feel like a girl, but Mel doesn't really think that she feels like a boy either. So in this book, she's kind of making that journey as well into possibly thinking, well, who am I? In terms of gender, in terms of like my presence on the earth, in terms of how people deal with me, in terms of haircuts, in terms of trousers, what kind of person do I want to be, and how do I want the world to react to me? And I think almost that makes the question, she's more active about it. I still use she because she hasn't actually quite figured out what she wants to do by the end. She's kind of stopped using pronouns, but she hasn't gone to male pronouns or anything like that. It's still a kind of identity in flux. But she's more active about it. she's kind of making this, she's asking herself the big questions, and whereas Ryan is a bit more passive, he's a bit more like going, okay, I like this, and I'll go with it, and I'll kind of shape myself around it. Mel has been a bit more belligerent about it, and she's really fascinating to write in that.
But it seems more straightforward for him somehow, because there's a kind of a fate, like you said, the mother with the piano, society calling him a scumbag and so on, and there's a fadedness to it. But Mel, I don't know if it's because she's from the same place, so it's a different thing. But maybe she got away, I suppose. She went to Glasgow and things changed for her or something, but definitely...
She never kind of became defined by anything as kind of concrete as scumbag or musician. For Mel, it's just that whole huge, all-encompassing gender is the thing. You're a girl. But nobody's ever thought about Mel enough to kind of define her beyond that. So she doesn't have the kind of very specific things to fight against. She just has this huge thing instead. I know that sounds a
Which
bit
is
weird.
kind of scarier. Well, not scarier, but like it's more open or something. There's more...
It's huge, and it's something that a lot of young people are kind of considering now, and we have it in our house too, because my son is trans, and so we've been having a lot of these discussions about gender and about identity and about like what the world wants you to be, and how do you go beyond that, and whether we can have this, you know, binary and all of this kind of stuff. So I suppose that was all in my head, and that was something that was so important in our family, and it was definitely at the forefront of my mind, so it kind of made sense that it was coming out through a character then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's something that like I felt very strong. So I read both of these books, I suppose, within a month of each other, and I was walking around the house the whole time going like, who am I? What made me who I am? Was it my parents? Was it my grandparents? Was it some experience that I had that I can't remember? Because I mean, the big thing about Ryan in terms of one of the things that defines him in the third book is something he barely remember, or doesn't actually remember, and doesn't really want to talk about. So answer me. What makes me who I am? What makes you who you are? Do you have any?
Look, Danny, people came to enjoy literature, not to have an existential crisis as they walk off down the road back towards Bantry going, who am I?
But I promise that's a positive thing. It's a really wonderful, they're both really wonderful identity quests, these books. A bit about memory and forgetting, and whether you drew any conclusions yourselves, because you both wrote books that involve the remembering of characters, the remembering of incidents, the not remembering. I mean, Georgie is someone I think of who has something she wants to share with the world, and she's told, you should put it in a memoir, we'll do a memoir. And someone is helping her write a memoir. And obviously the memory of Benjamin Crow is, like you said, it's both a secret and a kind of a global story. So did you guys draw conclusions about how important memory is in your books or in life? How important it is to remember certain things, forget other things? I'm just throwing it out there.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I was really interested in like myth making, you know, particularly with like public figures, and I was thinking of Sylvia Plath, obviously. I was thinking of, you know, like Ian Curtis and Kurt Cobain, and you know, all of these, the entire 27 Club, basically.
Yeah.
And there are these popular ideas of their lives and deaths. Even if you don't know that much about them, you kind of have a vague idea, but it's like rarely that simple. You know, it's rarely that straightforward. And I thought about like how strange would it be to be like a family member of one of these icons, you know?
Yeah.
But the memory thing, it's very interesting, because Beth's mother, Alice, she kind of grew up, obviously, like traumatized from her dad's death. She was only 12 when he died, and kind of became a confidant of her mother, and almost developed this kind of codependent relationship with Lydia. And Alice's response to that has been to like never talk about Ben to her own child, because she doesn't want to do the same thing. So I think sometimes in families, even when you try and do, you know, when you try and undo the mistakes of the past, you end up kind of doing a new mistake.
Yeah.
Because Beth's issue is that she knows she has no connection to him, and obviously he has had a big influence on her life. Because I think like trauma like that does trickle down somehow, you know, even if you try not to talk about it, even if you try to bury it, you know.
Yeah. Or the opposite, if you do nothing but talk about it, or you just pass it down.
Exactly,
like this.
yeah.
It's so complex. And where did you draw any conclusions in terms of? I mean, Ryan. I keep thinking about Ryan and kind of Ryan not remembering the thing that everyone talks about in the third book, which maybe we won't bother talking about it. We don't need to. It's part of the reading of the book, but also then Georgie being kind of told put it down in a document, and Maureen. Jesus, Maureen. Why am I forgetting Maureen? Like her whole thing is kind of she was a forgotten person.
Yeah.
She was a forgotten person by Ireland.
Yeah, and that kind of bothers her because she's completely between the cracks too. There's a point in the book where she's watching this documentary where it shows this Magdalene survivors arriving at the mansion house in Dublin for the reception, where the Irish state was, recognising the ills that had been done to these women, and were trying to make some amends towards it. And Maureen was had a child out of wedlock, but it was kind of just after this kind of movement, as it were. So she's there trying to kind of tie herself to this traumatized generation, and her granddaughter saying, well, actually, you don't belong there, which really annoys Maureen, actually. So, yeah, that's interesting too, because then with Maureen, she's working against the memory of a place and of a time that doesn't quite fit anymore, doesn't work anymore, that she can't really share with anybody. She's constantly fighting this idea of Ireland that doesn't really exist anymore, and people think she's a bit cracked. And then you have like Georgie, who has a very specific task at the start of this book. She's horrified that Ryan Cusack, this scoundrel that she knows wants to make music for a living, she thinks he doesn't deserve to. The stuff he used to get up to, absolutely not. So she has this very specific task. She wants to stop it. She wants to let people know what this guy used to do, what he used to be like. She wants it to be known. And instead she's got this journalist who starts helping her, but really is trying to tell her that her own story is way more interesting than anything that Ryan ever did. And her story is a kind of she used to be a sex worker. Her story as kind of like, as this kind of traumatized person in a very capitalist Ireland, that's really important. But of course, that in itself is being packaged for consumption like you were talking about myth making, this kind of like, the journalist wants to kind of package this side of Ireland and sell it. That's the whole thing with that. So I mean, then when you've got Ryan, who's been kind of being told when something comes to light that happened to him when he was a teenager, and he's been told he needs to face up to it, and he needs to discuss it, and he needs to he needs to contextualize it and live it and all of this, and he's like, oh no, I don't actually, I've no interest in bringing this up again. I've put it away somewhere here in the back of my head, and I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to look at it, so why are you making me? So I mean, there's no conclusions to kind of like that I made really regarding something like memory, apart from that here is a thing that we can use for good in terms of kind of helping us with the question of identity, for example, or helping us with figuring out who we are, where we are in the city, in our communities, or it can be something that actually is dragging us down and kind of hurting us. So I think, yeah, it was fun to kind of, that's such a big topic, isn't it? Such a big topic. And I didn't even know I had it in there. And now I'm going to be telling everyone this is a book about memory.
Yeah. I think we only have a few minutes left. Are there questions out there? Does anyone have a question? I'll ask another question while people are thinking of a question. And that's a kind of a cheeky one, right? In terms of, Eimear, you are in the middle of writing another book. It's a book of essays about growing up as a camogie player, is that correct?
Yeah.
Right, so we've got that out there. What I want to ask you both is, fiction-wise, another novel or a collection or whatever it might be, what do you think, I'm not asking you what you're working on, because that's not a fair question, I know that as a writer, but what kind of things would you like to do? Like, Lisa, you've more or less boxed off Cork, right? You've absolutely nailed Cork, and more or less Ireland too, in this trilogy. Are you done with Cork? Will you go there again? Are you thinking the next novel is going to be completely different? Are you building a checklist for the next novel?
I'm just going all around there and like dropping pins in a map, going, who's next? I don't know really. I mean, I often, for everything for me, starts with character and people and speech a lot of the time too. So I think for me, it'll depend on how they start talking to me. Whether they'll
Has
be
anyone started talking to you yet?
Oh yeah. People have. I know what I'm doing. I don't want to talk about it too much because you kind of start letting the air into it and it'll all go out of shape. But
Okay.
I think there's going to be something that's going to be a little bit. Yeah, I'm not going to say actually. But it's fiction. It's a novel. I don't know. I think I want to do maybe some essays as well. I'm just getting ideas off Eimear, basically.
Ian, what about you in terms of the next fiction project? Because I suppose you're probably headlong into the essays now.
Yeah, I'm writing a couple of short stories. I'd love to do a collection of short stories. Writing one at the moment that's like set in New York, like a legal Irish girl living in New York, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. So I'm like, maybe that could be a novel down the line, or a novella, maybe.
You gotta watch them.
You gotta watch for the novellas.
But yeah, I like that idea of having an Irish character in another location and kind of letting that friction kind of open up more ideas of identity and things like that. So that might be the next big
The
thing.
identity hour. I might have to start a podcast. Have questions emerged from the audience? Anybody? I've got 2 pages worth. I can keep going. Music and sport play big roles in both the books. And maybe I don't have a question here, but I'm going to keep talking until you tell me something, because there's something really interesting happening in terms of there's a collective consciousness in Holding Her Breath of people remembering Benjamin Crowe. And there's this collective love of sport. Like Beth has her kind of, what would you call them, her tribe, like Marina and Cormac.
Yeah.
And she's kind of been lost from her tribe or whatever. She's gone back to her tribe. So there's a collective thing going on in both of those senses. And Ryan ends up in a band, which is kind of, even though he did play piano, if you'd have told me he ended up in a band in having read the heresies, I would have said not in a million years does he end up in a band.
He does it in an arse about way though. Like he ends up in a band while he's like living like 9,000 kilometers away from the rest of them. So I mean, like it's a very he does it very gradually. He comes a lot closer. It's the only way to work for him, really.
That is true.
He's an awkward sod.
But then and music like that's that image. That's a rave, like in my head. Like it's a beautiful thing to look at now, especially when we haven't been inside a nightclub or a late bar for a long time. But they're very collective moments. Reading and writing are completely solitary things. Except, I suppose, when we meet up in things like this. But how do you square those against each other? Are you like, did you both want to write something that lots of people bought into, or?
It's like it would have been easier for you because your other life is as a team sports player, like really, isn't it? So which isn't in the slightest bit solitary in any way. So you're a component and you're part of a team.
Yeah, I think they complement each other really well, even like writing being solitary and very mental and just turning things over and over in your head. And then in the evenings I get to like run out onto a pitch with like loads of other people and, operate.
People. You get to flake people for an hour.
That's it, exactly, yeah. Just like express yourself physically. That involves flaking people, absolutely. But they complement each other really well in that way. But weirdly, when I came to write about it in fiction, I went for an individual sport, and there's a lot of scenes where Beth is just in the pool and just like doing laps and thinking and meditatively, doing this repetitive practice over and over again. And I realized after a while, that's what I do when I go out to the ball wall, and I'm just like hitting the ball off the wall over and over again. I love doing it, and it's almost kind of hypnotic, you just kind you get into the flow of it, and your mind just goes blank, and it like that was how I imagined it was for her, just like doing all these laps. So I did connect it back to the team sport.
And she actually, isn't there a point at which she actually starts walking up and she gets a bit stressed when she starts walking up and down the room, like touching just touching the walls, and like that she goes, that's her safe place again, wrong word, but like that's her thing. Like
it's her way of kind of soothing herself, and bringing herself back to an even keel.
And she says there's at one point, I know nothing about swimming, but she says at one point, I think she's actually in training and she's in the lane next to Marina, and she says funnel, because she wants to like just get ahead. The competitive spirit is coming back.
Yeah.
Is that like swimming parlance? Funnel.
That was something that I don't think it is swimming parlance, but I was like, could this realistically be swimming?
Because I was thinking, I was like, I don't know what I was doing at some point, but I was like really needing to concentrate. I found myself going funnel. Like there's something linguistically satisfying about saying it, like getting to yourself to concentrate. Funnel. Like if I did transcendental meditation, it might be my phrase.
Yeah, no. When I was a kid playing camogie, I'd be in the forwards, and I used to, if I got the ball in my hand, I'd start heading for the sideline, And my dad would always roar at me, cut in, head for the goals, So I was like, what might Pierce shout at Beth, from the bleachers?
Cut in.
So I came up with funnel, yeah.
Fantastic. And what about music in the Heresies? Did you know, or in Revelation, did you know that was going to be did you know that's where we were going?
Oh yeah, I did. And like I was thinking there, I mean, writing, is very solitary, but it's a kind of a faux solitary kind of thing in that, writers sit by themselves to write the thing, but they do it from a place of being fascinated with people. I mean, that's what we're all doing. We're trying to capture something of the lived experience, the person, what it is to be, whatever. And that's like our fascination with people and how they interact is kind of why we do our thing. And even if it is a very personal novel, it's still a fascination with yourself and how you're interacting with the world. So that, is it solitary? Yeah, I mean, practically it is, but it isn't at the same time, because you're living with all these people in your head and you want to see how they bounce off each other, and you're kind of watching it in real life as well. Most of the writers I know are very extroverted kind of people who enjoy being around other writers and talking and all this. I think a lot of us found lockdown very, very hard, kind of being isolated from that life that we draw from, So the music thing, it was definitely always going to be music, because I've done a lot of hanging out with musicians in my life. They never really think that I'm as cool as I think they are, which is kind of a bit sad. I mean, nobody really thinks writers are sexy, which is terrible. I think we are. But
no, we don't hold a candle to musicians.
No, it's really bad, isn't it?
Yeah. They have a way of like just sitting and standing that's kind of just different.
We will practice. We'll be good at sitting. Look at this stance. This is pretty good, I think.
It's true. Right, we're bang on the hour, I think. So last chance for questions. Yes.
Yay.
He's just firing it up there. Yeah. It's a good idea to wait for it just in case.
It's very scary asking a question in such a big tent. Anyway, I know, Eimear, I loved your book.
Thanks,
Lisa, I listened to yours on audio. It was amazing.
Cool.
Danny, I've yet to discover yours. But I wanted to ask you, over the last year, is there anything you've read that really blew you away? Because I'm looking for summer holiday reading recommendations.
Oh, God. Do you know what I've done this year, from the start of this year? And this is actually, I think, something that we talked about last year, is that I was feeling kind of very caved in by all the kind of professional reading, the work reading you have to do. There's a lot of proofs and there's a lot of reading you do for events and stuff. And I was really kind of losing my love for reading. So this year I kind of made I decided I was going to read all the things that were gathering dust on the shelf that I had never gotten around to. And I started with The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. And I started with that because Anne Enright once said in an interview that it was the only book she'd ever thrown in the Liffey. And I was like, I need to see what this book is like. Do you know what? And it's a brick of a book. It's like that big. Do you know what?
I hope you weren't reading Anne Enright's copy.
I fished it out of the river, dried it off on the radiator. Do you know what? I adored it. I absolutely adored it. This long-winded kind of early 20th century German novel set in a sanatorium. I tried to read the last paragraph aloud to my kid at home, and I burst into tears, which I think is a great thing. So I've been kind of rediscovering, and just if that's too long, I've been also reading all of the Jean Rhys books that I never read, because the only one I'd ever read was White Sargasso Sea. So after reading Good Morning Midnight, which I think was spectacular, I was reading a lot of those kind of stuff, and loads of Roberto Bolaño, all of the kind of Bolaños that I had on the shelf, and all the kind of lesser Bolaños. So yes.
Very good. I read a great book last year called Leave the World Behind by Ruman Elam, who's an American writer. And I should preface this by saying it is a pandemic novel, but it's brilliant. I think I read it last June or thereabouts, and it's about a family going to upstate New York for a holiday. And as they're kind of traveling, they see all these strange things along the way. I think they see like a field full of flamingos, and they see like just this sense of nature reclaiming the territory, and when they finally get to the house that they've rented, the internet goes out, which of course causes absolute pandemonium. They've two teenagers, but it's really, really good.
Tragedy.
Yeah. And I also really enjoyed White City by Kevin Parr, which I read recently. It's very, very funny.
Can I add one in? Because same project as Lisa, just reading off the shelf. I read Kazuo Ishiguro for the first time, so I probably seem pretty lame right now, but A Pale View of Hills is a summer book because it's set over a summer, or it's a woman remembering a summer, and it has the best ending of any book I think I've ever read in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'll say no more than that. A Pale View of Hills, absolutely amazing. Are there any rapid fire last questions, or will we give Lisa and Eimear a massive round of applause? And thank you. No, thank you guys.
Thank you.